have to disable that. So hello, everybody. My name is Bobbi McGrath, and you are at the webinar, Unlock the Secrets to Identifying Mold and CIRS in Your Clients, Expert Insights for Practitioners. And we want to welcome you in, my counterpart, Heather, and I. And we wanted to make sure that you're comfortable and we're going to answer questions at the end of our presentation. And we've got a lot of things to cover tonight. So we're going to get started with our disclaimer, which is pretty important for us to make sure that you understand. So our disclaimer is, whoops, this talk is for educational purposes only. So we are not prescribing. It's not meant to be a prescriptive or medical information, that kind of thing. So take what you want and leave the rest. And as you're going through this, we'd love for you to think about whether or not, if you needed a consultation at the end, or you have clients yourself or your own personal health, we are here for you. We want to make sure you understand that we're here to support anybody with regard to mold and chronic inflammatory response syndrome. So keep that in mind. And please know that this is being recorded. So just remember that you're submitting to that when we are recording this today. So without further ado, I will hand it off to Heather, and she's going to welcome you.
Welcome, everybody. We are really glad you're here. Welcome to all the practitioners who are in the audience. And I know we also have non-practitioners here. We are just very excited to bring this information to you and to help you start to recognize the symptoms of mold toxicity and chronic inflammatory response syndrome and some initial next steps you can take as an individual or as a practitioner. This information is a tiny fraction of what we really want to share with you. And at the end of the webinar, we're going to share an awesome opportunity to do a deep dive into mold toxicity, CIRS, and the regenerative approach, which we are both very passionate about. We are launching our baby, basically. It's an online live course starting January 6th, and we would love to have you join us. But for now, I want to introduce you to my dear friend, and many of you already know my friend and colleague, Bobbi McGrath. But I will be forever grateful to her because she was the one who suspected I had mold toxicity and CIRS at a time in my life when I was chasing Lyme disease and I wasn't getting better. So if it was not for her, I really think I would still be sick and disabled and chasing symptoms. She has been my cheerleader on my healing journey. She is so insightful. She's an amazing practitioner, very caring, very knowledgeable. And her expertise, she has taught me so much about nervous system dysfunction and trauma. But I want her to be able to share a little bit about herself. So I'm going to pass it back to Bobbi.
Thank you, Heather. That was really nice of you. So I won't bore you with all the details about my education, but you can see that there that I have a master's in exercise physiology, and I am a certified regenerative health and detoxification practitioner, which we're going to talk a little bit more about that. I received that certification through the Institute of Regenerative Health, which a lot of you on this call tonight have gone through that program or are going through that program. And you all are part of Carrie Drinkwine's amazing plan to bring regenerative health to this world. So kudos to you for showing up today. I wanted to share with you that I have my little unit of family. I'm married to Tim, and I have 3 grown adult children, 2 sons and a daughter. And my health history is that I have chronic, or had, I should say, chronic inflammatory response syndrome. I had the symptoms of it from mold toxicity. And I was able to identify and restore my health from PTSD, mold, toxicity, and CIRS using the regenerative approach that we're going to discuss tonight with you. But my big why and why I hopped into this adventure with Heather was that toxin exposure in our world is rampant, and mold toxicity and CIRS, unfortunately, is greatly misidentified. And I wanted to make sure that we could bring awareness together, Heather and I, and the knowledge. And we want to bring reliable resources, because that's really what we feel is missing, is for people to be able to find education and resources to help other people that have mold toxicity and to identify them. And that those people can stop suffering, because Heather and I definitely suffered. There was major suffering for both of us, but we wanted to make sure that you understood that there is a way to get through this, and using the regenerative approach and giving someone the possible or the hope and the possibility that they can improve their health and drop all of their labels and get back to health as soon as they can, using the practices that we're going to be discussing a little bit tonight and going further into in our course. So with that, I wanted to introduce to you Heather Sunderland. Heather is an amazing practitioner. She is one of my really, really, really good friends. She would give you the shirt off her back. She is somebody that I truly feel is a practitioner out there that can make people feel seen, heard, and held. She has an amazing faith, and we have worked together through this whole time putting this together, faith-based, praying over things and making sure that we are in God's alignment with this. And Heather has been a big part to that. She is somebody that brought the regenerative approach to me, which you'll find out more later in our stories. And I'm so grateful for her and her heart. And I'm excited for you to know and learn more about Heather and her stories. So I will hand it over to you, Heather.
Thanks so much, Bobby. So I have a background in nutrition. I was a dietitian, diabetic educator, and became a certified functional health coach to try to figure out what was wrong with me. I do have a husband and a son. I did have, and you'll hear a little bit more about my story, but I did have undiagnosed Lyme for 22 years and a lifetime of mold exposure and CIRS, which I have restored my health. But my big why is I really don't want people to suffer, and I want people to know that they have hope. When people have been sick a long time, and especially in the chronic Lyme world, a lot of people have been sick and they're missing this mold piece and the regenerative approach piece. So that's my heart, is to see people get better quicker and to be able to truly get to the underlying root of what's causing them to be ill.
So we're going to go
So
ahead and go
I'm going
off
to go off
camera.
camera.
Yep, we're going to go off camera and we're going to roll into our presentation and get started. So please write down your questions to make sure that you have them at the end when we go through the Q&A.
So, do any of your clients, or maybe if you're an individual, have any of the following symptoms: neuropathy, brain fog, chronic fatigue, even after a good night's sleep? Or do you have trouble gaining weight? Or do you have major trouble losing weight? Are you having digestive distress, colitis, Crohn's, irritable bowel, bloating, gas, frequent urination, especially at night? Or are you seeing clients that have just multiple chronic conditions? Do you, as a practitioner, get frustrated or confused, disappointed when your clients are just not progressing? Or you have fear and anxiety when you hear that somebody might have mold toxicity or CIRS? I know it's like people say, I don't want to deal with that.
And I want you to think really quick here about what you think a component of illness could be. What percentage of illnesses do you think possibly could have an environmental component? And just in your mind, I'd love for you to put that thought in your mind. And then we're going to reveal to you some facts that we found out at we from studies that we found that 95, they believe 95% of all illnesses has an environmental component. And that of that, 50% of those are attributed to poor indoor quality, in which mold contaminated buildings is a major contributor, according to a Rappaport and Smith report that we found. And another statistic that's really interesting is that mold is something that 1 in 4 people, so if you take 4 people, they walk into a building, the percentage of them, 25% of them are going to be genetically predisposed to struggle to detox mycotoxins from mold. So I'm not saying that they won't or they can't, but their genetic makeup is causing them, when the epigenetics around their genes, the environment that surrounds our genes, is moldy or toxic, there's 25% of the population are going to struggle with opening up their detox pathways and being able to detoxify. So that's a pretty high percentage of people if you think about it.
So mold is mighty. There are 100,000 different species of mold. Now, not all molds are dangerous, but they've found about 100 molds are toxic. And here are some facts about mold. most of the time, we don't see it or smell it, which is not what people think. In cases of chronic sinusitis, that bottom statistic, 93% of chronic sinus infections can be attributed to mold. Asthmatics, 50% of the time, it can be attributed to mold. And it's considered that about 50% of the homes in the United States have a history of water damage. There are a lot of homes that have water damage and mold toxicity in them.
So what exactly is mold? Mold is actually a fungi that breaks down plant, animal matter, and man-made materials. It's mold recycles and decomposes plant and man-made materials. So think of like a log rotting in the woods or something like that. It grows with moisture and feeding materials like drywall and things like that. And it doesn't require tons of moisture. It just requires mostly humidity. It produces spores to be able to reproduce, and mold is considered a living organism. So what are mycotoxins? Well, this can kind of give you a little visual that a mycotoxin is smaller than a drop or a drip in a pool. It's an invisible chemical produced by the mold. They're the most poisonous aspect of mold and have no scent, so you cannot smell it. It cannot be killed. You cannot kill a mycotoxin like with bleach or something like that. It makes us sick because it crosses the blood-brain barrier and causes systemic inflammation and permeability in the digestive tract. And then mycotoxins are too small for us to see with our naked eye.
So, in summary, mold is a fungus that's fed by water damage, or a moist environment. And as Bobby said, it doesn't need very much moisture at all. Mold can grow anywhere that there's a food source and some moisture. And mycotoxins, as she said, they cannot be killed. They're a toxin. They do not have a smell, and they can be hidden in your environment. Even when you've removed the mold, the mycotoxins can remain behind. And that's really what makes people sick, are the mycotoxins. So, what is mold toxicity? Basically, it is the buildup of mold toxins in your body. And this can happen, from previous exposure that you didn't even know about, or it could be current exposure or both. And that's why when someone has mold toxicity and they leave a toxic home, a lot of people will say, "Why don't I feel better?" Well, the bottom line is the mold and the mycotoxins are still in their body. And so we have to get them out. So mold is considered a great masquerader. It can present as so many other health issues. And because of that, it is often, not diagnosed. And mold toxicity is caused not just due to mold and mold spores, but the biotoxins that mold can create. So mycotoxins are one of those. But when there's water damage, we also have bacteria and endotoxins. So all of those things are lumped together and called a biotoxin. And that adds to the toxic bucket. Now, mold toxicity, these issues are not typically, treated in conventional medicine, and doctors aren't trained in environmental illness in conventional medicine, and even sometimes in holistic medicine. So mold toxicity can cause such a wide range of symptoms. It can be really hard for somebody as a practitioner to recognize that somebody has mold toxicity if they don't have any experience or training in it.
So what does mold cause in the body? Mold causes neuroinflammation. So the inflammatory process in the nervous system, which I know, and you'll hear our stories later, was one of my hugest issues was neuroinflammation. It also causes mitochondrial damage. It's also known as a mitochondrial disease because of the fact that it does damage the cells that are producing the energy in our body. And so it's actually downregulating all of our energy. That's why chronic inflammatory response syndrome is part of it. Oxidative stress is something that happens because of mold, because there's so much debris that happens when the cells are damaged and the body's got all these free radicals running around, and it's got to work on cleaning it up at the same time that it's also trying to detoxify you. And then tissue damage goes along with that. If you've got damage in the cells, you've got debris, you've got tissue damage. I know I had weird stuff happening to my joints and things like that, that was tissue damage. It can also activate pre-existing conditions like Lyme disease and EBV. And I think, Heather, you had a comment about that, right?
Yeah, that was definitely me. I blamed my Lyme on everything, but it was really the toxicity and the mold that caused my Lyme to reactivate and for me to get EBV at the same time. And the next one, um, oh, sorry, I'm thinking of another slide.
Oh, that's okay. Well, we both had global inflammation. There's no doubt about it. Global inflammation meaning you've got inflammation from your head to your toe. And I know that was definitely my issue was I was inflamed all over, unfortunately. So mold, mycotoxins also impact the body as well. And we talked a little bit about neurotoxicity and oxidative stress, but the mycotoxins impact our immune system. And it really does a number on our immune system, putting things in overdrive, downregulating other things. It really does a number on your liver. And it also can cause a lot of oxidative stress where there's cancer. It can produce cancers in the body, unfortunately. And working on your kidney, it can make your kidneys toxic. Your GI tract can become leaky. And then there's also reproductive issues. You can have problems with actually carrying a baby or conceiving a baby or all of the sexual dysfunction things.
So there's a whole wide variety of mold symptoms, and not every individual is going to have all of these, but they might have several. But issues with brain fog, poor memory, anxiety, pain is a really common one. Neuropathy can be a very common one. Many people are diagnosed with fibromyalgia, and mold and toxicity are underlying roots to that, along with unexplained weight gain. That was definitely me. Some people, they cannot gain weight no matter what they do. That numbness and tingling, which is neuropathy basically. A metallic taste in the mouth can be related to mold, but it can be related to other toxins as well. Vertigo and dizziness, very common. Had a client today who sent me a note, super dizzy. We know she's in a moldy house. Bobby really struggled with ringing in her ears.
Yep, not fun.
Digestive issues, very, very common because mycotoxins wipe out the good bacteria in the gut. So very common for people to have SIBO, SIFO, leaky gut. Fatigue, most people who have mold toxicity are tired, tired all the time, even if they get a good night's sleep. Insomnia is another one I don't think we have on here. Changes in mood when I have clients say their husband's hangry, I always think mold. Excessive thirst, dehydration, bedwetting in children, something to evaluate. And hormone imbalances are really common. My hair didn't grow for like 2 years. Rashes are also very common in mold toxicity.
Yeah, well, you had lost your hair, but it didn't grow, and I lost lots of hair. You can totally see I've recovered from that, but I lost a lot of hair, which is very scary as you're going through stuff like that.
So I just want you to think, you've heard all these symptoms. Do you know anybody, or do you have a client who's presented with some of these symptoms or several of these symptoms? Water damage and mold toxicity that may be an underlying component to their health issue. So, in summary, oh, I think this one's yours, Bobby's.
Nope.
No, it's mine. I'm sorry. In summary, mold toxicity can impact every system of the body. It leads to a wide range of symptoms. So, three people in the same household can present very differently, and it may not be linked to a single cause. So, it's really important that practitioners better understand the signs and symptoms of mold toxicity so that they can support their clients and so that we can get to the underlying root. And if that underlying root is mold, people aren't going to get better if they're on the greatest protocol, but they're living in a toxic environment with water damage. So here's a picture of me and my family a very long time ago. It was about 16, 17 years ago. My son David, we didn't know it. We were all living in water damage in our house in Pennsylvania. We had a water heater burst and we did not address it properly. My son was 2 years old when that happened. all of us developed health issues about 2 years after that water leak, and he was asthmatic, he had life-threatening food allergies, very underweight. He's actually much thinner now than he is in this picture, but he was diagnosed with severe ulcerative colitis, and his blood work shows Crohn's. Now, he has chosen not to, treat because at that time we didn't know it was mold toxicity. And so he's an adult who has a lot of health issues, and these issues remain. My husband, he was unable to lose weight, metabolic syndrome. He had every skin condition label, atopic dermatitis, psoriasis, and eczema. Now we have reversed all of those. He has still struggled with metabolic syndrome, but he doesn't have mold toxicity or CIRS anymore. And
Sorry.
my story is a little different. I'm a little more probably classic of people who have mold and Lyme, but I grew up and I had allergies and asthma. I didn't know at the time I was living in mold. And by the time I was 30, I was having daily pain that was labeled as chronic fatigue and fibromyalgia. And as time went on, I just had more and more pain and more labels. And at 35, I had to stop working and I developed severe neuropathy, interstitial cystitis, and I was actually homebound for 10 years where I couldn't handle being in a vehicle due to pain. It wasn't until I was 52 that I was diagnosed with chronic Lyme and I treated herbally. I improved, but I still struggled to walk and to stand, and I had severe ligament laxity. And it was in 2019 I entered health coaching school, sort of hoping I could figure out what was wrong with me. And literally, I went to school in a zero gravity chair because if I sat on other furniture, my vertebrae went out of alignment. I was at the chiropractor 3 times a week. Very common in toxicity for people to have ligament laxity. During COVID, my Lyme resurfaced. The same month I developed mono and Graves' disease. It was a very, very dark time in my life. I was awake 3 days at a time. My heart rate was elevated constantly, very, very anxious. And that's when Bobbi stepped in and suggested I had mold toxicity or CIRS, and she was right. I did. I also had SIBO. I was down to 10 foods that I could eat. Pretty frustrating for me who had been a dietitian. And I started working with a great practitioner who knew CIRS, and nothing improved after 6 months of treatment. And that's when I met Mary and Michelle. I think Michelle is on the call right now. They were using a regenerative approach. They had CIRS. They were using it and getting better. And I am forever grateful to Michelle Ricci and Mary Cornwell. 3 days into the regenerative approach, my diet went from 10 foods to 11, and every 3 days it expanded. 3 months out, I no longer needed to go to the chiropractor. This was after 8 years of 3 times a week. 3 months, my brain fog lifted. I stopped needing to use my assistive devices for walking. At 6 months, I had walkers and little cane seats. And at 23 months, I was told I did not have Lyme, I did not have mold, I did not have CIRS, I did not have SIBO, I did not have Graves. Now it's 4.5 years out. I mean, I haven't been sick for a while. There were a lot of layers to peel away, but I'm no longer sick. I'm able to walk, hike, participate in life in a whole new way. It is a process. But if I can get well after 28 years of illness and disability, so can you, and so can your clients.
Well said, Heather. Well said. So let's talk a little bit about what is CIRS, chronic inflammatory response syndrome. It's basically a complex chronic biotoxin illness. So the thing that I need you to understand is not always just from mold. Biotoxins are from living organisms like mold, viruses, bacteria that can come from water damaged buildings, and parasites. So when the toxic bucket in the body overflows, it can lead to systemic issues and impairment to your immune system, inflammation in the body, and that can be verified by blood work, which we will talk about in our course. But the thing you need to understand is CIRS is not always caused by exposure to mold, but most often it is. And if you see a CIRS or run into a CIRS patient or client or have a family member that has multiple systems in the body that are impacted, that's where you need to start thinking environmental and thinking about mold. So symptoms of CIRS, Heather and I decided we would pick our top three, even though we had a lot on this list. So Heather, I'll let you go and share yours.
So one that was really unusual, I had static shocks and I live in the desert. And I just thought it was because, it was low humidity here. But actually, when I no longer had CIRS, the static shocks, every time I touched things went away. I also had major temperature dysregulation and I could not sweat. And I just thought it was because I'm in the desert, there's low humidity. But when I started healing, I started like getting drenched when it was 120 degrees out in Phoenix. But that did not happen my first few years living here. The other thing is I had severe neuropathy, and that's very, very common in mold toxicity. And CIRS and mold toxicity symptoms really overlap.
Definitely, definitely, definitely. So my symptoms were different, but similar. We had some similar. Mine was blurred vision. I really felt like, what the heck is going on? I had an eye exam. I didn't need glasses, but things were blurry. And I kept going to the light of the window or had to turn on the lights to see things. And you're going to learn more in a minute in another slide why the blurry vision is part of mold toxicity. The other piece I had was poor exercise recovery, which also the third symptom was just incredible connective tissue pain. After I would work out, which I was used to doing, usually regularly working out, if I went and sat, like if I went to church and then I tried to get up after an hour of sitting, it was real. I looked like I was 80 years old. So it was really just hit me hard that I just didn't understand why that was. And people were like, oh, you're just getting old. And I was like, I'm 52. No, this is not the way it's supposed to be. So tinnitus, where Heather had mentioned, that was also something that really plagued me. So one of the things that we want to make sure you take away tonight is that mold impacts 11 or all the 11 systems of the body, and in particular, especially the lymphatic system and the respiratory system and the brain. We'll talk more about different systems in the course, but those are really getting damaged because of the blood-brain barrier issue crossing over. The gut is also something that is severely damaged. So when someone's kind of coming to you, or you have a family member or friend that's got a lot of different symptoms and they're touching different systems in the body, that's when you really do need to suspect that it is some type of toxin in the body. So here's a case study. Looks like a nice couple here. That's me and my husband, Tim. And it's one house, two stories, which basically we had a lake house that the crawl space was flooded by somebody who decided to clear cut some land behind us and change the water table, and water just rushed into our crawl space. And we didn't know for a while until, I don't know who figured it out, but someone was there because we're not there all the time. And we ended up having to remediate, pump out all the water, put in 6 inches of concrete, fixed it up, thought it was good. And then we both went down there after it was over, and there was mold, but we couldn't see it and we couldn't smell it. And I got incredibly, incredibly sick after that. Within a few weeks, I'd already been getting sick, basically with lots of inflammation because I was slowly getting exposed. But when I went down there, I was taken out at the knees. I had over 30 symptoms that developed, and I tested positive for CIRS based off the blood work. However, here's the difference. My husband failed this eye test that we're going to tell you about, and so did I, but he did not test positive for the CIRS information when you do the blood work in the symptoms clusters. So we both improved using the regenerative approach that I'm going to be talking about and Heather's going to be sharing tremendously. But it's interesting how two people can be exposed but coming out with two different outcomes. But my mold story didn't start just then in 2018. It basically started back when I was in early childhood. I had memories of my basement flooding as a kid and probably not being properly cleaned up, although my parents did their best, with the shop vac and tossing out the basement carpet and things like that. My story is rooted more in the fact that as I moved through life, I was on the fast track to burnout. I was lacking boundaries and trying to fix everyone and fix everything and basically running myself into the ground, which I later found out was a typical pattern of a child of an alcoholic. And as I was growing up, there was a lot, as I got to be an adult and started my family, there was a lot of stored grief in my system because I was dealing with really close deaths in my family of my mom, who passed away of early onset Alzheimer's. So I lost her pretty early in her life, in her 70s. And my brother passed, unfortunately, very suddenly at 48, only 10 weeks later. My dad passed 3 years later after that. It was a lot of grief coupled with my kids leaving home or going off to college, and my dog passed away. And so it was really, that was just like this toxic bucket inside of me that I wasn't handling very well. And I also had stress from some pretty significant health challenges within my family, and it contributed eventually to me being diagnosed with PTSD in my late 40s. And basically, what happened is so when the mold came along and I went into that crawl space, it was like my body had an open door for the mold to quickly take me out. I suffer from brain fog and severe memory issues and extreme connective tissue pain I was telling you about, and insomnia, which I never really had insomnia. I didn't have sleeping issues, but I did once I became incredibly high mold content in my body. And then the anxiety was debilitating. I'd never had really anxieties either, but it had taken over. I didn't really understand. And my fight or flight response was literally out of control. I believe I remember sharing with my neurological chiropractor that I had had 25 blistering hot flashes within one day at one point. And then I also struggled, like I mentioned, with no longer being able to exercise without being just debilitated the next day. I also struggled with daily routines, like a lot of tears, a lot of dysregulation, going to the grocery store and being in tears. It was embarrassing, and I just didn't understand what was going on. And it took me a while, once I became a health coach, right, that same year that I was exposed, it took me a while to put the pieces together. And with the neurological chiropractor I was seeing, I found out that I was actually suffering from mold toxicity and CIRS. And it was a relief because I thought I was losing my mind. I thought I was going crazy. I started on another approach that was not the regenerative approach, and it took me only so far until Heather checked back in with me after we had connected with her, and I informed her that I thought she maybe needed to look into mold and CIRS. And she introduced me, thank the Lord, and thanks for Heather for reaching out to the regenerative approach. And its improvements, I made improvements over the course of 12 months to the point where I could let go of some of the or all of the pharmaceuticals that I had started taking with this other approach. And I embraced the deep, deep detox approach where food is medicine with the regenerative approach that we want to share with everybody. Although my body is still working to repair my nervous system, I am no longer suffering from multiple mold and CIRS symptoms. And what I really want people to know is that you guys can do the same thing. Whether you're a practitioner or you're an actual client or patient, you can do the same thing by following some of the guidelines that we're going to be sharing with you, especially if you decide to go deeper with us into our course. And the last piece to my story I'd like to share is that chronic stress and past trauma definitely sets the person up for having more difficulty detoxing any kind of toxin from their body, but especially mold. It's a piece to the puzzle that absolutely needs to be addressed by the healthcare provider in order to restore persons fully back to homeostasis and health. This will be one area within our course that I and Heather are super excited about training more on with you. So let's go through a little bit quickly on implications of CIRS and what happens if someone is not getting the proper treatment. One thing you've heard kind of beat it to death is nervous system dysregulation, just really struggling with all kinds of different labels and mental health conditions and things like that, and anxiety, insomnia, gut dysbiosis, leaky gut for sure, increased cancer risk, which we mentioned, hormonal imbalances, like we said, with hair loss and things like that. Metabolic syndrome, which is that weighing too much, not letting go of your weight or not gaining weight. I really struggled for a while to put weight on because I was so leaky. And then I know both Heather and I experienced blood sugar dysregulations, like diabetic symptoms, right, Heather?
Yes, sorry, I have a puppy that's barking in the background. I turned off. Yeah, and I had major thyroid issues with the Graves, which I reversed. And I had very high loads of all pathogens, which I want to tell you is common in anybody who's exposed to water damage, very normal for them to have high loads of parasites, viruses, and bacteria. And then you have the increased risk of anything that's already in your body resurfacing, like EBV, and increased risk for autoimmune diseases activating because the body is so inflamed and toxic. So Dr. Richie Shoemaker came up with a way of this is a way of assessing if somebody might have chronic inflammatory response syndrome. And so there are basically all these different blocks. And if somebody has 8 symptoms from 3 different blocks, and you can take a picture of this, you can look online and put in symptom clusters for CIRS, and this will come up. Um, if someone has a lot of these symptoms in 3 different blocks, it's very likely that they have chronic inflammatory response syndrome, and it's worth further investigation. The other thing that he came up with, which is such a wonderful test, it's called the visual contrast sensitivity test. It's an eye test that you take online. It's $15. So I love this as a starting place for people. When basically, when we are toxic or exposed to mycotoxins, the optic nerve of the eye gets inflamed and blood flow gets sluggish. So there's less blood flow to the eye and the optic nerve, and people have trouble seeing shades of gray. So you're basically looking at a picture with shades of gray that are tilted to the right or the left. And everybody who's ever come to me as a health coach, they've all failed this VCS test. But it's a great starting place to assess if a client may be toxic and being exposed to water damage, and it's something you can use to track their progress. Or if you suspect re-exposure, it's a wonderful, wonderful tool, and it's just so inexpensive.
Here is an example of what you would get if you did the VCS test online as far as your results. So you can see it shows the left eye and the right eye because you can have a difference in your eyes. And you can tell this, it's kind of covered up. It says failed. This would be a failed test where you see all the red. The left eye is worse than the right eye. And then you also see the symptoms checklist, which is a great way. You get this report when you receive the results from Surviving Mold website where this is at, and you can also send that to your provider, or your patient or client can send it to you so that you can keep track of it. So it's a really good tool. It's inexpensive. And a lot of times people just need to see it black and white.
So if you have a client, these are some guidelines when to have them test their environment for water damage. If they are not improving on the protocol you have them on, then you really may want to consider um, assessing their environment. If you know they have CIRS, if you know they have Lyme, if they have multiple chronic issues, if they have autoimmune disease, you really want to make sure you're testing the home and that it's a safe place for them to heal, because they're not going to get well in a toxic home. So this is one of the tests that you can do. It's sort of the standard in the industry. Environmental Readiness Mold Index stands for ERMI. It's 240 dust cloth tests that you can do yourself. It was really developed to compare homes by the EPA, but it has become really a standard. If you don't know there's water damage, this is a good place to start. And it will show you 36 different molds, 29 that are toxic, and 7 that are outdoor molds in your home. And we're going to give you a link after this course. You're all going to get an email with a PDF. And so that PDF will have a link to the VCS test. I encourage all of you to take it. It can be very insightful, and a link to the ERMI as well. And then the symptoms of mold toxicity and CIRS, a checklist for you. So the regenerative approach is a very unique approach. And what I love about it is it creates an internal environment where really the body can do what it was designed to do. And the body can come back to balance. And Bobbi and I have really experienced that firsthand. The first most important piece of this is you can't stay in a toxic environment and truly expect to fully bring the body back into balance. And it's the hardest piece for clients. The next piece that's really critical is opening up detox pathways, making sure bowels are moving, lymph is supported. Some people need liver support, gallbladder support, kidney support. Our course is going to do a deep dive, right, into how to assess those pathways and options for supporting clients. And then the piece that for me was huge was this nourishing and alkalizing piece. Nobody in the world in mold toxicity and CIRS talks about food and nourishing the body at a cellular level and alkalizing it. Because when we do, we bring down inflammation. The body is able to detox better. The foods that we use to alkalize support those detox pathways. And the part to me that's so amazing is that basically when you start eating more alkaline, things cannot survive in the body. And Bobby knows, and I know Bobby's experienced it too. I've had 2 years of things dying and leaving my body because of my diet, not because I'm taking something to kill. And I just think that's such a beautiful part of the regenerative approach.
I agree. And you've been a poster child for that because if you can just eat and let things leave your system because you're alkalized and your body feels safe, that's really amazing medicine without any pharmaceuticals. Gently detoxing is the fourth point there. And that's the point the regenerative approach is. There's a lot of people out there that are going to be going taking a blowtorch and fire hosing their bodies or wanting to, and that's really not the regenerative approach. You want to go at the pace that the person can handle. And so if they're detoxing too fast and they're having detox symptoms, the regenerative approach steps back and says, let's take it down a notch. Let's make sure they open the detox pathways, make sure that they're not in mold, and gently detoxing them so that they can go on with their life and improve as they're going through the detoxification. And part of that is the gut restoration that has to go on. So closing the front door, like I say, and opening the back door, you have to be able to eliminate. And in order to be able to restore your gut, you have to be able to get the toxins out. So, decreasing your toxic and pathogenic burden on the body is really important. But if you're stopped up and your tub does the drain in your tub's not open, everything's just going to continue to overflow. So, this approach is really something that Heather and I are passionate about. We want to make sure that there's other providers that aren't aware. I know a lot of you on this call are regenerative health actual practitioners, and the work works as we've been told by our fearless leader Carrie Drinkwine, and we want to take people through this approach, and mold and SIRS patients really respond well to it. So as you're going through this tonight with us and you're thinking about listening to the facts about people having mold toxicity and what SIRS is and that kind of stuff, and if you are a practitioner potentially that is going to be seeing patients or clients, I want you to think, what would it feel like to be more confident about supporting clients that have mold or SIRS and being able to uncover that through your intake process and through your questioning and through your knowledge? And think about, is there someone you already know that you can help right now with mold or SIRS, and you know that they have that or potentially have that, but you just don't know how? You don't know the first steps, you're not sure, not confident, and you just really need to have some additional training. And then another question I want you to think about is, do you think mold toxicity is going to get worse with our extreme weather? We saw some reports lately that the global warming is going to make mold more of a nuisance. It's going to cause more issues. I can imagine with the hurricanes and the massive destruction that's going on with the hurricanes and some other natural disasters and things like that, and the water piece to it, that mold is not going to go away. It's going to get worse. So, knowing all of that, we would like to invite you to join our mission. And our mission is going to be supporting you as practitioners. It's part of our mission to help figure out the signs and symptoms, the environmental awareness, and follow a roadmap of supportive health to help a client or another family member or friend get through mold toxicity and reach the other side and detox and restore their body.
So, our mission is twofold: to fill the educational gap for healthcare practitioners, to help people like yourself identify clients who may have mold toxicity or SIRS more efficiently. But we also want to help clients restore their health by using this approach. And I have just found with clients, they are getting better so much quicker than with other approaches, and in a much less expensive way. So if you're a practitioner and you want to make a difference and you want to feel much more confident supporting those complex clients, and our course, Navigating Mold and CIRS Expert Insights for Practitioners, is for you.
So one thing we want to share with you is that Dr. Scott McMahon, we found a quote from him that he said possibly every doctor in the United States, and I would imagine this would be considered across the world, is treating mold illness and they just don't realize it. Most doctors, and it's a huge percentage, do not have the training to identify mold illness. It probably never crosses their mind even until they've had the experience of someone maybe coming in. And I know Heather has wanted to go back to some of her providers and say, you missed it. You really did missed it, right, Heather? Where they just missed it.
Yeah.
So that's where you come in. The healthcare system needs more practitioners trained in identifying and supporting mold and CIRS clients as far as helping them through their illness and restoring their health. So if you're ready to elevate the knowledge and sharpen your health detective skills, we wanted to help you with a comprehensive practitioner training, and we've designed it to be laser focused. We're not fluffing it up. We're not giving you a lot of extra things. We're giving you the awareness that you need. We're going to help you fine tune your practitioner skills because we're going to have case studies. We're going to provide a lot of information for you that is consumable information, not fire hosing you, but just things that are going to help you get further down the road and be able to identify and truly feel confident in supporting your clients with mold and CIRS. Because when you feel confident in your job and what you're doing, that parlays over to your clients or patients feeling confident.
So grab your chance. This is a one-time offer. This pre-launch pricing, this is the first time we're launching the course, is not going to stay at this, price that it is right now. This course, we're just so excited about it. It's 15 modules. There are 15 case studies. There's a quiz with every module. We're going to have this first time round. It's going to be offered live. There will be replays for every live that we do, but we're going to do live Q&A after we go through the modules, which we are not going to do once this is evergreen. And you get an amazing comprehensive resource guide with links to all the tests, how to test the body, different options, how to test a home, tips on remediation, recommendations for binders, for supporting pathways, books, movies, podcasts, like all in one place. It's really an amazing resource. But what's also really unique is we're going to have a private community for practitioners. And when we do the course for clients, we're going to have a private community for clients as well, where you can be supported in that private community. So this is a little overview, and I'm not going to read all of these of what the 15 modules cover, but I want to highlight, we're going to do a major deep dive into the nervous system. And this is an area you cannot heal when the nervous system is dysregulated. We're going to go in a deep dive into detox and drainage pathways, how to support them, toxin binders, what binders, when to use them, is it appropriate to use them all the time? There are so many different options out there, but what I think makes our course really, really unique is that we're also going to share what are the other approaches out there. There are several other approaches out there. Bobbi and I have tried them. And we did I get people who the needle's not moving in their house. So we want you to understand these other approaches. There are wonderful aspects to these other approaches, but I feel like all of them are missing the nutrition piece. And then our last module, we have case studies throughout, but the last module, we're going to give you some really good case studies. So if you're ready to ditch the confusion and the overwhelm, the frustration and lack of results, and you want to gain a plan for your clients that works and it's simple and it's economical, and you want confidence in yourself that you're not going to be frightened by these complex clients, and you want resources specific to mold and CIRS, this course is really for you.
So right now, I want you to consider joining our mission. It's an important mission. We've shared the two principles missions that we want to stop the suffering of our clients and patients so they can get identified earlier. And we want to train practitioners to be able to do the identification and support them. So we would love for you to join our mission. And I have a mission, and Heather has a mission to really kind of dive in with you and teach you and help you learn and help you think outside the box. But we also want to help you grow your practice. We want you to be able to grow as a practitioner. We want you to grow as a patient and learn more about your own body, learn about mold, be an advocate for people that have mold illness. And then the last thing is, and the most important, is changing a life. By going through something like this and becoming more educated, pinpoint, laser focused educated, you can actually change a life. You can help somebody get out of mold and restore their health and potentially avoid horrible diseases. Like today is a 2-year anniversary of my sister's passing of pancreatic cancer. And I sat with her 2 years ago and watched her slip away, and it was awful. And I will tell you that there's no proof, but I know my sister had toxins as a piece to the puzzle of why she had cancer. And so from that day on, I was determined not to be quiet anymore about it, that I was going to be bold about toxins and I was going to share that with my clients and that she wasn't going to die in vain. So changing a life is something that you all can do by joining us in our mission. And we would love to have you. And we're excited about the community that we're creating. So here's our live pre-launch coursing as course pricing, as Heather said. And this is the one time we're going to be doing it live for 12 weeks. You're going to have tons of support and be able to work with us and get to communicate with each other. It is a $14.97 value, regular price, and we're going to be launching it for the low price of $49.97. And it's 67% off. And we have an option for you to pay in full, or if economically it would be better for you to do 2 payments, we will take 2 payments as long as it's paid up by the time the course starts in January, which is January 6th. We do have links that we're going to put in the chat. There are specific links to purchase. One is specifically for the Institute of Regenerative Health, basically students or alumni. That's a specific link. If you are from there, you would need to use that link to purchase. And then anyone outside of the Institute of Regenerative Health would use a different link. And those will be labeled. And we will also make sure they get emailed to you so you know exactly how to sign up for the course and all the next steps. If you don't even know what the Institute of Regenerative Health is, please don't worry. Don't worry about it. You can just ignore that, but you want to make sure you're using the correct link. And one of the things we'll also be sending you after you complete the 15 modules and all the quizzes, we are going to be sending you a certificate of completion, which some people might say, oh, it's just a piece of paper, but it should be something you should be very proud of. And it can be something you can use yourself in your social media. It could be used potentially if you're needing to get continuing education. That could be something you could look into. So I wanted to make sure that you understood that. And Heather's going to tell you a little bit about our affiliate program that we are going to be rolling out.
So we're really excited to have you join us on our mission. And if you're passionate about health and wellness, like I think many of the practitioners on here are, and if you want help to transform other practitioners' understanding of mold and CIRS, then this is a wonderful opportunity to become an affiliate for our upcoming live course, Navigating Mold and CIRS Expert Insights for Practitioners, and so earn some money at the same time while you're making an impact. So for everybody who signs up for the affiliate program, when somebody purchases a course, because you sent them your link, you will earn a 15% commission. And part of that's because you're expanding our reach. You know people we don't know, and we appreciate that. So basically, on a course that's $497, that would be $74.55, 15%. So be on the lookout for an email about our affiliate program after the webinar, and feel free, if you're interested in the affiliate program, to email us at support@navigatingmoldandscirs.com to express an interest if you're a little impatient to get the email in the next day or two.
So what are your next steps? We want to make sure that it's really clear. You can sign up for the 12-week live course, which will be recorded, so you don't need to be stressed out if you can't make it on Monday nights when we're going to be going starting on January 6th. It will be recorded so you can get into the portal and watch it at your own time. You're going to need to keep an eye on your email to check and make sure you check your spam folder in case you are missing our emails or wondering where they're at. Check your spam folder. And one of the things they told us with a new website like this or a new platform is you can hit reply and just tell us hello, and that will help increase your chance of getting your mail to the direct mailbox. And you can also mark your mail as, you know, okay to receive and put it into your primary mailbox. Sign up for the affiliate opportunity and tell a friend. That's a no-brainer. And then get excited. Get excited to learn, think, grow, and change a life with us, because that's one of the things that we are super excited about, is to hear the stories of the life-changing things that you all will be doing along right side next to us. So right now we're going to come back on camera, but we wanted to thank you for attending. We have made it in 53 minutes, so we're excited that we've kept things going. We would love for you to place your questions in the chat or potentially raise your hand, and we can have people come off mute. But right now it probably would be best to just start with the chat. Heather and I will come back on with our cameras so you can see our lovely faces, and we will take your questions. But right now we've got the connect with us. If you are a person that potentially has clients already that have mold or CIRS, and you feel overwhelmed or you don't feel quite ready yet to do working with them, we can be here to support you with that. We can help them and we can help you. Or if you are someone who has come to this webinar that's not a practitioner and you do need support and you're looking for extra support, we are here for you as well. So you can see that we've got both our websites. We each have our own private health coaching business, and we've collaborated to create Navigating Mold and CIRS, which we're incredibly excited to roll out. And we've been waiting for 8 months to get this off the ground. So please hit us up, send us a message, tell us how you enjoyed or what you took away from our webinar today. And then we're going to go ahead and pull up the chat and see what kind of questions anybody's listed here.
Don't see any questions yet, but if somebody has a question about the course, about what we've shared in the webinar, a question about the symptoms of mold toxicity CIRS, please feel free to write it in the chat, or if you want to ask the question because you don't like typing it in the chat, you can do that as well.
And I see, Heather, good job on putting the purchase for the course in the chat. You can see it says sales page on there. That would be if you are not an IRH person, or if you are and you're interested in purchasing the course, please use the specific IORH link to purchase the course. And we would love to have any questions that you have that are, thank you for all of the great jobs. Thank you, you guys. I appreciate everybody's so supportive and we love our community. Let's
So
see.
is there, oh, CIRS, so someone said, is there a difference between CIRS, CIRS, chronic inflammatory response syndrome, and systemic inflammation response syndrome?
I don't think I've officially heard of CIRS or
I
SI.
haven't either. I sort of suspect there isn't. But I would love to get back to you on that, Marie. Please email us that and we can get back to you on that. I will definitely look that up. My head says there is not a difference.
Yeah, it could be.
Michelle Ricci, who's another regenerative coach, is saying CIRS is the chronic condition, systemic inflammation. Yeah, I think they're synonymous.
Yeah.
Daisy says, how can we help the vulnerable population most likely to be stuck in moldy environments to get out if someone isn't affluent? Is this just a death sentence? It's not always a death sentence, but some people, I have clients who are in mold who are very, very sick, and they're in subsidized housing. They have no income to get out. And I really don't even like supporting I mean, we can support their body, but what I have found is they're not gonna really feel better because they're living in an environment that's toxic and poisonous, and usually the people who are the sickest are the ones who are struggling for their body to detox these things out. So it may not be a death sentence, but they may be very chronically ill, like I was so chronically ill for so many years, but you need to be in a low toxic environment to heal, so it doesn't mean no mold. And everybody's sort of different what their body can handle. Some people are very, very sensitive. And some people can handle a little bit of exposure to some toxins because our body was right designed to be able to detox. So it's a great question. How do we help these people? It's I mean, there are people out there, there's something called the CIRS project where a man in Colorado is actually in the process of purchasing land to build tiny homes that will be safe homes for people, but we need more places like that where people can go and get out. And it's such we need like people who have a heart to do that or people who are willing to build homes and I don't know the answer, but we do need a safe place for people to go and get out and heal because it is such a problem. It's the biggest problem I have with clients is them finding that safe place because they really can't heal until they're in a place that's safe.
Right.
I'm
And
trying to read the questions. Go ahead,
well,
Bobby.
I was just going to say one of the things that's helpful is when somebody is in that type of situation, they need to reach out to other communities and churches and other places that could help them financially. And there's even contractors, there's different people that can help you, you know, begin the initial steps. And I think one of the next questions was kind of piggybacks onto that. What do you recommend if vacating the home isn't easy or affordable? And I'm going to jump back to David to your question after this, but there's definitely things you can do, right, Heather? Like making sure your windows are open, making sure that, you're even visqueening off an area that has mold, shutting the door. It's not, it's a Band-Aid, putting a towel under the door, making sure you have a dehumidifier so that you can take away the humidity that's actually feeding the mold. What other things would you say, Heather, that you've had?
Air filtration, a box fan with a HEPA filter to cut down on, things and pollutants in the air. If you don't have pets, you could run a diffuser with thieves oil to bring down the mold and mycotoxin load. Um, everybody's so different in terms of what they respond to, but I think everything you do is going to be beneficial. You can support your detox pathways while you're living in mold. You can do, there are things as coaches we can do to bring down the mold load in the body and the pathogen load without causing symptoms. So there are things you can do. I always tell people, I can't promise that you're going to feel better with what I'm doing until you're out of the environment. That's the root cause of the problem.
Yep.
I've had people go out into a camper. I had a gal, very, very high levels of mold, and left into a camper, left her husband in the house. And we got her on a protocol supporting her pathways. And in 3 days, she was out playing pickleball. Now, the healing journey's been very up and down. But getting out, I said, I can't help you until you get out. Her hurts me too was like a 30. For those of you who know what that is, very, very, very high levels of toxic mold.
Yep. It's probably one of the most um, unsatisfying things to do as someone who helps people with mold and mycotoxins and things like that and water damage is to have to be the bearer of like the bad
That
news.
news.
It really
It's
is
bad
hard.
news, but it's good news if you can know why you're getting sick. But it's a rabbit hole for people to have to deal with leaving a home, remediating a home, the expense. But I think too, it's a relief to know why they're sick.
Yes.
But it's
Well,
it's very overwhelming to deal with the steps that have to lay ahead when people are sick.
and especially if you have um, mixed this opinions within one household, because there's a lot of people that are sick and there's people that don't believe that it's the mold that's making them sick. And it's so complex when it comes to relationships and financial pieces. And unfortunately, women are more impacted by CIRS. And, so there's just a lot of very sticky situations that as a practitioner, we do address in our course. We address how to have boundaries with your clients and how to address specific topics because these people, and I know I was desperate to figure out what was wrong with me, and desperate people do desperate things. So there's some training in there that you're going to have some boundaries in your practice and to be able to say the tough stuff. And unfortunately, you can have all the resources in the world, but that person has to, or that unit or family has to be able to make decisions on their own and move forward. So David asked, how much is the next round of the course? He does not finish schooling until February. Well, first of all, you don't have to be done with school to take the course. I'm not sure if that was even something that you were saying. Um, but I know we had mentioned that this course is only going to be this pre-launch price one time. So it'll definitely be doubled, David, if not added even a little more. So if that helps you, um, the other piece to what I want to share with you is it's a once a week commitment for maybe what we say 75 minutes, maybe a little over if we have a lot of questions, Heather. And so it's not going to be something where it's tons and tons of studying because a lot of it is just awareness and knowledge. So you don't have to study a lot. And so you're not putting in a ton of time. And you get out of it what you can put into it, really. So it shouldn't, even if you're still in school for the first month that you're also taking our course or 6 weeks, I think it would probably be doable. Don't you think, Heather?
Yeah, I mean, basically every module is going to be PowerPointed like this, right, with a quiz, and it's going to be 75 minutes. Each module will be an hour with time for Q&A afterwards.
And you get, I mean, it's recorded, so you can go back as many times as you need to get that information in. And the resource guide is really going to be the thing that I think once people get their hands on it, they're going to be really happy that they have it because there's nothing really out there like it. So hopefully that answers your question.
So
Um,
there are a few more questions. Marie says, does the ozone air purifier remove mold? There's a lot of controversy around ozone, and the big people out there in the world of mold do not recommend ozone because you have to get rid of the source. So if we're not getting rid of the source of the water damage, removing the wood that's impacted by mold, you're going to continue to have mold growth. Now, in our course, we are going to go over some things out there. There's a device called High Tech, which is not an air purifier, it's an air reactor. I haven't used it personally. It is supposed to kill viruses, bacteria, mold, and mycotoxins, but you have to still get rid of the source, even to be someone who the high tech would be beneficial um, device to use. So, I mean, it's a great question. A lot of the things that people do out there, like fogging, it's great for mopping up mycotoxins, but we have to get rid of the source of the water damage. I've had many people spend money on doing things like fogging, and they're still sick. And I know they're being exposed, and it can take them sometimes a year to be ready to like do testing of their body to see that they're still being exposed. And then they retest their house and find out that they spent a lot of money. And each person's situation is very unique. But I
that's for
hope
sure.
that's helpful.
Yeah.
I
And
think I got all the questions. And
Michelle
Daisy,
asked Michelle asked what day and time for the course, and we're going to be doing Monday evenings. I think we decided possibly 6 Central, but that time is not solidified yet, but it's going to definitely be Monday nights. So,
yeah, I think we had said 4 p.m. Pacific time. Yeah, 6
yep.
Central. Um,
But it's not in stone yet, so we're just,
yeah, and it will all be recorded, and then it's going to be each module will be uploaded onto the digital platform. So we just thought it would be so much more fun to do it live the first time we were doing recordings for the course, and there's just something different about interacting with a live audience, even if we're not seeing you, because we're interacting in the chat with you.
yeah. And I think that the interaction is where, excuse me, where people are going to be able to bring those questions like you were asking today. And what we can do is give you our best experience. I've been through a massive remediation. Heather's been through remediation. Um, we've coached people with like, the ERMI and that kind of stuff. Heather's done a ton of that. So at least we can bring our experience. We are not remediation experts. We're not claiming to be. We're not going to be able to tell you exactly what to do as far as the steps, but we can give you a general outline and a guideline. And that's really, truly what we want to do, is prepare practitioners for when you find somebody that has mold or CIRS and you've figured it out detective wise, that you can say, here are your first steps to figuring this out. And eventually they may have to move on to somebody that is like a remediation building biologist specialist, things like that, that we can't, that's not our lane to drive in, but we can at least give them the tools to get going in the right direction. And at that point, I think that's when they're going to be able to have their fight or flight go down a little bit, because they do have somebody that they trust, one that's been through it and healed and remediated and is helping them with the next steps.
Yeah, and the other thing as a practitioner, it's important to understand like what is proper remediation. So if you have a client who told you they remediated and you're getting frustrated because they're not getting better on their protocol, I mean, I can't tell you how many times my clients decide to do it themselves and they don't do what I recommend because they're trying to save money and they'll say, "Hey, I fogged for $2,000." And I'm like, "That's not proper remediation." And then they're spending more money in the long run because they're not getting better. So if you can understand those, what are the basics, that's going to really help you as a practitioner. I mean, you can't make your clients do anything. That's going to be up to them, but your job is to educate them, and to come alongside them and to cheer them on. Thank you for all of you who stayed a little extra. I know we went over. Please feel free to email us if you have any questions, either separately or at support@navigatingmoldandsurs.com. We thank you for taking time out of your evening to join us, and we were just so excited to share tonight.
Yep. This has been 8 months of, it started out with, hey, let's do a little webinar on mold and CIRS and help people, help practitioners. And then it grew into a business and a course. And now we're going to re-engineer it after we're done with this first section and turn it into a client course. We're going to have portal, we're going to have memberships, we're going to have coaching. So it's really kind of grown its own thing. And we're really excited for what God's going to bring to us and bring, we offer to you all. And we're just like kind of giddy today with the amount of people that had registered. There was over 150 people that registered. So we're really excited to be able to extend our reach. And we have two more webinars that we're going to be hosting. Next one is Sunday afternoon at 4:30 on the 17th, and then December 3rd. So if you have friends, family, practitioners that you think need to hear this information, please, please, please share our website with them or share your registration page. A lot of it's going to have to be updated and tomorrow with the new date and the new time and fixing some of the email glitches we had with the time zones and stuff like that. So we appreciate everybody that stuck in there with us and showed up at the right time. So thank you for coming. You will get emails on the affiliate program and a lot of other emails, just kind of hoping that you will join us in our mission. And thanks a lot for coming tonight. We're going to stop the share and the recording, and you all are free to go.